He looked at our plant and he told me, in a free market, you will not exist.
So how did you build this organization? What issues you faced in the beginning? What were the problems you encountered?
The first challenge we faced was when Maruti came into the market. So we said, if we don't do anything and Maruti becomes successful, then we'll be left behind. So we do something and we may not succeed in our effort. At least we would have tried. So we took a decision that come what may, we have to do something.
And I think Maruti must get the credit for transforming the way we think about quality in the country.
No doubt about that. It was Maruti which really opened up a new vista in the Indian auto industry in terms of. Before that, Tata Motors or Telco played a major role in developing the capabilities, but Maruti took it to the next stage.
I remember we used to wait for buying a premium Padmani was maybe 3-4 years waiting list, and Ambassador was a 1 year, 2 year waiting list.
And in today's world, people won't believe that we live in that world.
What would be your advice to this young generations that learning from your experience? You could tell them.
Yeah, I will tell the young people to travel. Go to China. I would strongly recommend them to go to China. The way that country has progressed, the speed at which they are progressing, the leapfrogging they are doing will motivate you. It will push you that we can also do it. Young people have to be bold, take bigger bets, but you have to work hard.
Good morning, Mr. Balaji. This is the 8th episode of the series we started to record the history of Renaissance and quality in India since 1980s. 1980s is a time when transition from controlled economy to liberal economy just about started. So at the request of many people, we thought it's better to record this history for posterity. And there's no better way than to listen from the people who were part of this change process, how they moved from one. So this is the 8th episode we are conducting. I thank you very much for agreeing to our request to participate.
And thank you for inviting me, and have listened to some of the episodes that you had sent me. I think it's an excellent idea so that younger generation can live through what we lived through and learn from it on what to do and also what not to do.
Thank you. And let me introduce Mr. Balaji. He is a person I've met maybe during the 1980s in the CI executive councils to begin with. And subsequently, we got involved in the Deming journey with the Luca's TVS, and that's how we got to know each other much better. And I've admired the kind of influence you've had in industry over the years as a role model. And he's coming from a small town, going to, engineering, post-engineering, management education. And we would love to hear from you that with the early part of your experience in molding your character and the people who mentored you.
Thank you, Janak. And I think I'll make this beyond quality as a kind of a leadership journey, including industry and so on. So then it'll be holistic. Well, basically, I come from a family which have given a lot of importance to academia. My father was a civil servant. I feel like he was the guide and mentor to me, as well as to other members of the family. There were 4 of us. I was the only son, and 3 of my sisters were there. My father was so far-sighted, he encouraged our sisters also to get educated and pursue career in civil service. And all of them developed into senior civil servants. And he guided me into various options that was there. That's how I went into engineering, and later on I went into management. So in the early days, it was his mentoring which shaped our thinking. And in those days, if we go back in time, it was in 60s, India was a very different place. And I still remember, as a young teenager, I used to read Time magazines and so on. And the population of India, if I'm not mistaken, was more in the region of 400 million or thereabouts. And they used to say, and India was importing food. And America gave this PL480 wheat supplies. And Time magazine used to say, if at this they're importing food projected into the future, population is going to grow like this. How will they manage? That used to get me very worried, right? And events have shown that how resilient our country is. So one of the earliest impressions I formed was we're a resilient nation. There are crises. It looks as if it's almost end of the story, but we somehow come back, right? And we saw that in 1962 war, we lost in China, but subsequently how we recovered from it, how the Green Revolution was ushered in. So that is fresh in my mind. So after I did my engineering, logically in those days, people used to do post-graduation in engineering. I was not aware of this management education, but my father knew. So he told me this is a good area for you to look at. So I was one of the earliest. It was 1968. I joined Institute of Management at Ahmedabad. We were the fifth batch, I think. It was not so widely known in those days. But that was a revelation to me. Engineering was, we had a lot of people in our family who went through the same college, so there were no surprises there. And of course, in those days, there was only one university, Madras University, but today we got multiple universities. But it was one university which had all the colleges affiliated to it. And Madras University had a very big reputation in those days. Not that it doesn't have today, but I think it is slipped a bit. But Ahmedabad was a very, very different experience. The subject itself was new. The methodology of learning was new. And there was an all India student community which was new. And it was refreshing for me. The reason why it was refreshing, the case study, which was the key format in which education was done, you were supposed to express your opinion. That was the first time that many of us, till that point of time, it was more like you read what is given to you, right? Or answer the questions which you expect will come. But it was the first time you have to think for yourself and then say, what is your view on this? And I also learned there are multiple views on the same subject. So that was refreshingly fresh. And we had some very nice professors there. Dr. Ravi Matai was the director. And Vikram Sarabhai was, of course, the visionary who created this. And we had quite a few other people there who really made you think differently. So that opened up my perspective on industry and so on. So after that, you had the placement program. I had an opportunity to study further. I had a potential opportunity to do my PhD in MIT in the US. But that was the time I felt enough of studies. I need to get into work because I was not keen to do more and more of theory. I was keen to get into practice. And that was the time when campuses interviews used to happen. And Tata Group was considered one of the very large group to get into. And Tata Administrative Service, which was considered a premium service. So I applied for it and fortunately got selected. I had a stint in Tata's for about 5 years. The Tata Administrative Service was patterned like the Indian Administrative Service. So they used to recruit bright people and expose them to various companies in the Tata Group and give them the opportunity to get them started with some advantage. Thereafter, of course, you have to prove yourself on merit. So some of the well-known names which people might know, people like Xerxes Desai, who founded Titan, Mr. Krishna Kumar, who led Tata Tea, and Nausar Korodi, who led Voltas. Like that, many well-known names were there. And that experience of induction to the Tata Group, and you go to the Tata boardroom and you were talked to by all the legendary names like Mr. Nani Palkiwala and Choksi and others, it really made you think very, very special. And also the exposure we had going around Tata companies. And we could express our view of which company we want to join. And the TVS committee will consider. They'll also get the feedback from the participating companies. And then they'll decide how to place people. So I spent about 6 months in Jamshedpur. That was my first exposure to manufacturing. And I went to Tata Motors Jamshedpur and also had a brief look at Tisco in those days. It had a huge impression on me. That was the first time I've actually seen something as large as Tata Motors making trucks. So I made up my mind that this is the kind of companies I should work for. So at the end of that 6 months or 8 months training period, when the time came for us to express our interest, I was keen on Tata Motors. It just happened, I used to work with Arun Mehra in those days. Arun Mehra was one of the TVS officers. So I expressed a desire to him, saying I'd like to work in telco in those days. And they were also quite interested. But I think the TVS committee finally decides who will go where. And it was felt that for me, the more appropriate choice would be to go and join a younger company, which is Indian Hotels Company. I was not very happy at the time when I was posted to Indian Hotels Company. But unfortunately, it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. It was a young company led by Mr. Ajit Kerkar. And he was very ambitious to grow the company to great heights. And he was looking for talent. And so I joined their project department. And my boss was Xerxes Desai. And that was a wonderful learning for me from him. He taught me so many things about life and business and so on. He had his background in economics from Oxford University. You see, prior to our batch, TVS used to recruit people only with foreign degrees, like Oxford and Cambridge. So our batch was the first batch. They experimented with entirely Indian education. And I think we made a decent impression. So subsequently, the TVS program were completely Indianized. So Ajit was quite a taskmaster, but he was also very, willing to give enormous responsibility at a very young age. So I was made as a project manager in charge of the Intercontinental Hotel, which was coming up. So it was a totally new experience for me, managing such a large project. And then I did many other hotel projects like Taj Coromandel in Chennai and Fort Aguada Beach Resort. So I had my heart on manufacturing, but I had a different outcome as it turned.
That's a great introduction, having gone through this process at a very early age. Now, maybe what is the most important one impression you think from this Tata Administrative Service which you find?
I think the lasting impression I've had about Tata is I still do. It's a great organization. Their value system, their vision inspires you. The Tata Group were one of the few groups, I'm not saying they're the only group, but when they chose an area to go into, it was not just only profitability and all that mattered. They chose something which was relevant for India. Like the birth of Tata Steel, all of us know, the vision of Jamshedji Tata. Same thing went into creation of Tata Chemicals. And soda ash, there was a short supply, they decided to get into it. They mastered the technology themselves. Like power generation, which they did. Tata Engineering and Locomotive, which to make locomotives. Telco was birth was for locomotives. And then, of course, they went on to making commercial vehicles and so on. So there, and also the group was owned by trust. It was not a. So the whole drive was towards nation building, which I think was really. I enjoyed working there. I learned a lot.
Did you have any interaction with Mr. J.R.D. Tata? And
I had a very brief interaction. He was the chairman, of course, and we used to attend some board meetings, and there some questions will come, and I was asked to respond to it. So it was not a deep interaction. It was a very limited interaction I had with him.
Maybe now you can share your experience, transition from Tata Group to TVS.
Okay, see, the TVS thing is through marriage. I got married, and my wife is from TVS family. She is Venu's elder sister. So the reason I got inducted into TVS was that Venu's father, that is my father-in-law, he had this vision of going into a two-wheeler manufacturing. TVS was till that point of time were in component manufacturing. They were not in any vehicle manufacturing. Because there was a policy not to go into vehicles, because you'll be competing with the customers with whom you are supplying parts, which I think was right. But two-wheeler was something different. So he had this vision of getting into two-wheelers. And so he thought about this. In those days, there were a lot of restrictions. Remember, this was license Raj. I'm talking about 1975. Right? It was fully controlled by industrial licensing and so on. So he had this vision to get into it. He struggled to get a license. Government put all kinds of impediments in the way, saying mopeds is not a product that you should get into. The annual demand for moped was only 20,000. And there were already two people producing it. Luna Mopeds, and there was a company called Suvega in Tirupati. But Chima had a vision of if you can make 200,000 mopeds, right? He felt that was the demand in the country. So government put a lot of restriction, but he overcame all the restrictions. They put some conditions, we accepted all that. So when he wanted to implement this, he needed somebody in the family to help him. And he had all the ideas, but he unfortunately had a little bit of a health issue, but his mobility was not, he had a hip problem. So he was restricted in his mobility, but brilliant in his thinking. And Venu was young, he was studying at the time. So he said, why don't you come and join me and help me to do this? So I was really in a dilemma at the time, whether to leave Tatas and come. So I chose the typical safe option. I approached the TS committee and say, I want to take leave for a period of time. And because I just wanted to make sure that maybe after some time, maybe I need to come back. That was the first time I think TVS committee considered something like called a leave. They learn on the job.
Mm-hmm.
So finally it went to Mr. J.R.D. Tata. So of course they granted it, but he told me, you're not going to come back. But my blessings you can do, you can go. That's how I came into TVS. And I think that was in a way brought me back to manufacturing,
Right.
which was what I wanted to be in.
Sorry.
So the experience in TVS was very, very different. In many ways, TVS was like Tata in the sense their business ethics and all that was very, very similar. Customer orientation and employee commitments and all that. And in Chima, we used to call him as Chima. His name is T.S. Srinivasan. TVS had 4 brothers who laid the foundation for TVS after the founder passed away. They only led the diversification into manufacturing. And they set up this series of factories in Chennai, Pinpadi, with collaborations with leaders in the global marketplace, making brakes and wheels and auto electricals and so on. So Sundaram Clayton was the company where Mr. Chima wanted to do this moped project. That's where I joined them. And I still remember when we were planning the project, there was a discussion to have taken place. What is the capacity to which it should be set up for? Saya and Mr. Ajit Bhattacharya, who was, did you know Ajit Bhattacharya? He was heading TVS project in the early days. He was a production engineer in Luca's TVS actually, and he retired, and from there, Chima picked him up. So we were discussing. So he asked me to come up with our ideas of what capacity we should set up. So Ajit and we discussed. The total demand in the country was about 20,000. And judging by what Luna was producing and Surega was producing. So we said, if this is the demand, what kind of capacities can you set up? So we thought about the biggest we could come up to was about 50, 70, 75,000 kind of a size factory. Because we knew that he thinks big. We didn't want to go back with anything less than that. But he threw out that plan. And he said, please plan for 200,000.
Okay.
And we had a heart in our, I couldn't believe it. I said, sir, 200,000, the demand is. He said, you don't know. There will be demand. You need to plan for that. That was my first learning of thinking differently. And Moped went on to make 1 million mopeds. And also the design of the product also was interesting. He specified it not in specs, specified it from a customer point of view. So he said it should carry 2 people. And he specified what kind of people. He picked up 2 of his senior executives. Both of them were 6 feet tall and well built. He said both of them should be able to travel in this bike. And he said he should climb the mountain range in Tirupati. It should have the torque to climb it. And it should have a basket in front, which will be used for shopping, for holding some 10 kg or some. That was his spec. And the moped has lived up to that kind of a image. And today, if you go to South India, mainly in Tamil Nadu, it's more like an ultra-light commercial vehicle. You will see milkmen carrying a lot of milk cans in that moped. So it has transformed commercial applications in the rural India. So it was a learning for me of how to think in a different way, in a capacity-wise. And unfortunately, he died. The plant was to be inaugurated. He sort of had illness and he succumbed to it. He was at a very young age. He was only 56. And Venu had just come back after finishing his studies. And as part of the TVS organization at the time, I was asked to go to Luca's TVS to join as a joint managing director of their company. Luca's TVS had a peculiar structure. There were 2 MDs, one representing Lucas, one representing TVS. So it was not usual structure, but that was the structure there. And that's how I came into Lucas TVS. That was in 1979. And that was another, I've stayed on from 1979 till date. And that has been my lifetime experience in that company, which I'm grateful for because it has taught me so many things. It has helped me so many things and so on.
So how did you build this organization? What issues you faced in the beginning? What are the problems you encountered? And the leadership lessons you've learned, management that you learned from IM, how it all helped you to start this manufacturing organization, which is already there, and make it grow to what it is today.
Just to give the data on that, on the Lucas TVS, when I joined Lucas TVS, it was a leader in the auto electrical business. And Lucas was a dominant player in European market. And we had only one factory in Chennai. And we had a turnover of about 40 crores. 40 crores of those days, because the values, those days the dollar was about 12 rupees a dollar, so you have to calculate on that basis. And so those days, because of a license Raj and India demand was growing, you didn't have to seek there was no issue of selling. You only have to make. Production was the issue, not demand. So much so that every year, it's unbelievable but true, I had all the CEOs of customers coming and visiting us. And they used to visit other suppliers also like that to make sure that we have got the capacity for their plants. If I look back on that, it was quite amusing in today's context, but that's how it was. The kind of a situation. And I think Lucas TVS had a good quality reputation in the market because it had a very good product designs and it was made well and so on. But not the kind of zero defects that we are now expecting and customers are taking it for granted. That was not there. It was an acceptable level of quality in the sense we used to measure quality in percentages, not in ppms and so on. So that was a different world, in a kind of a world which fortunately we left behind. That was a comfortable world for those who were in the license Raj. But eventually they were also lost because it was just would not have made you competitive. And I think you asked me the question, how did we change in manufacturing? How did we go into all this? I think circumstances, right? The first challenge we faced was when Maruti came into the market in the early 80s, right? 83 finally they went into production. But sometime in the 80s there was that clear plan that Maruti would come into the small car. There were not many people believed that strongly, saying it will happen. They talked about producing 100,000 cars. Those days, the 2 car manufacturers or 3 car manufacturers were there. One was Hindustan Motors. They were making about maybe 25,000 cars. Premium automobiles, they used to make about 18,000 cars, 15,000 cars. And Standard Motors in Chennai, they used to make less than 10,000 cars. Numbers which you can't believe today. Such were the policies of the government in those days, that they had to make all of this totally indigenously, right? And still achieve global quality. You can see how contradictory the policy framework was. So when Maruti came on the scene and said 100,000, there were many disbelievers saying that how will this happen, right? And for us in Lucas TVS, 2 things happened. From 79 when I joined till 83, progressively, Lucas in England was not doing well. And it was clear to us Lucas was not going to be able to support us with much technologies in the future. And the small car that Maruti was planning to bring, there were no products in Lucas. So we were wondering what we should do. And we knew that Denso was coming into India. And Denso is the original supplier to Maruti. So you can picture yourself the situation in the 80s. We didn't have products. Maruti was coming in, and the Japanese supplier was also coming in. They had a collaboration with the Sriram group called SRF Nippon Denso. So we said, one part of our team said, there's no point in us wasting time on this because you're not going to get the business. You don't have a product. And if you're going to develop on your own, then it's going to be difficult because you've never done this kind of thing. Till that point of time, Lucas TVS never developed any design on its own. It was all Lucas designs. So that was my first point of decision making. And I had my fellow managing director from Lucas also with me, and all of us were saying what we should do. So we said, if we don't do anything and Maruti becomes successful, then we'll be left behind. So we do something and we may not succeed in our effort, at least we would have tried. So we took a decision that come what may, we have to do something. That was, to me, was one of the most important decisions we took. And we decided to, and we had fortunately a leader in engineering who had self-confidence to build a product, starter and alternator. So we designed from first principles a starter and alternator suitable for that application. On the positive side in Maruti also had leaders there. You remember, it was a government company with the government controlling 75%, and Suzuki was holding some 26% or something like that. So the head of engineering was Dr. Deshpande, who wanted Indian suppliers to come up. Mr. Krishnamurthy was the chairman. And he also was putting emphasis on local designs, local manufacture, etc. We said, and then he encouraged us, saying, okay, you could develop it. As long as you're able to meet our requirement, function, all that, please be rest assured that we'll give you business, right? But you have to be competitive in terms of quality and the price and so on. And I remember still, the very first product we tried was a simple product, the horn for Maruti.
Okay.
We were making horns, but our horns were bigger horns. It was original Lucas design. It had a good reputation. But Maruti needed a much smaller horn with a different spec. So we designed it. That horn taught us a lot. The horn will go to Maruti. It won't work.
Okay.
You picture that scenario. With a Japanese sitting there, we're supplying a simple product like horn, and it is inconsistent in its performance. What's impression that Japanese would have had? They turned around and said, you can't make a horn. How are you going to supply a starter horn?
True.
But rest is history. We went on to overcome that issue, developed a starter and alternator. We got the business and we started supplying. And as luck would have it, Denso had some issues because Japanese yen was strengthening a lot. So their prices became quite more and more. Whereas ours was completely indigenous product.
Mm-hmm.
And it was performing reasonably all right. And at one point of time, we had a dominant share. And there was a possibility of we also in some way getting connected with Denso. That didn't happen finally. But that experience of Maruti transformed the company because that gave confidence to our engineers that we can make a product to world-class standards and get acceptance and compete with Maruti, compete with Denso, and still get business. So to me, that Maruti experience of that period, and for which I'll give a lot of credit to our engineers and a lot of credit to Dr. Deshpande, who headed Maruti Engineering and the leadership of Dr. Krishnamurthy. It really gave us that starting point. And that made us to believe in our own capabilities more and more. And that's how we developed that business.
Great. I think I also recall those days when Maruti came into being and nobody believed that it was possible. And it's like, I think I had a good association, Dr. V. Krishnamurthy, and he is the one who promoted quality in the country. And Dr. Deshpande and Dr. Kumar, he brought them from BHL, got the best of the...
The entire team of Maruti came from BHL.
Right, because that's where Dr. V. Krishnamurthy was the chairman.
Mr. Bhargava was heading marketing. And I remember him visiting our plant in those days.
Who?
Mr. Bhargava.
Mr. Bhargava was... That is true. And I think Maruti must get the credit for transforming the way we think about quality in the country.
No doubt about that. It was Maruti which really opened up a new vista in the Indian auto industry in terms of... Before that, Tata Motors or Telco played a major role in developing the capabilities, but Maruti took it to the next stage, especially in passenger car.
See, I was also in industry, and when you mentioned about the license, especially getting anything imported was almost impossible in India. I remember we used to wait for buying a premium Padmani was maybe 3-4 years waiting list, and Ambassador was a 1 year, 2 year waiting list. And I recall Mr. C.K. Birla, he wanted to import only the drawings for the dies because the dies were getting worn out. And you applied to DGTD and so you have to advertise in the newspaper whether you can import that, anybody can supply that. And if anybody in India says he can supply, that ends the matter.
That was the system. And I remember most people, the trip to Delhi was only to DGTD.
Right.
To convince some officer there on buying a tool, buying a machine tool. It was, in today's world, people won't believe that we lived in that world. We lived in that world.
True. And I also recall at that point of time, even to get an expat senior executive in a company, you had to seek permission from the government of India, which was hardly ever done.
And government had these strange rules. And it was shaped by leading economists in those days. They said, you must control the capacity through licensing. Then they said you must make everything indigenously. You must go into backward area. Take it all together. And you said you don't need collaboration more than once. So if I had a collaboration for 5 years, it was not renewed. You were supposed to set up R&D and become self-sufficient. That was the regime under which Indian industry functioned. It's quite amazing how many companies which started in that period, like Luca, TVS and many others like us, not only survived and adapted and changed to be where they are today.
And even if you did get the license, there was 100% import duty.
Absolutely.
How do you compete with the rest of the world?
So it was a very, very different regime.
Right. So I think to Maruti's credit, and also because it was a public sector in a way owned by them and strong government influence, we were able to get the imported equipment at a lower cost. But I think the focus that Krishnamurthy brought on quality is remarkable.
There's no doubt. I think Dr. Krishnamurthy had an vision in in making things different, to break the paradigm, as it were.
Right.
He did that in BHL, and I think government chose the right person at that time to break the paradigm and bring something different. And I still remember the first car that Maruti brought out was 50,000 rupees. It was unbelievable in those days. And
That's right.
I think, and soon I think, within a year or so, it was clear to everyone, this is the future.
You mentioned Dr. Deshpande, manufacturing engineering, and Dr. Kumar was head of quality. And when we invited Professor Ishikawa for the first international conference in India on TQM, Dr. Krishnamurti invited Deshpande to make a presentation. Then Dr. Kumar made a presentation how they brought this about. I made a presentation about the experiment we were doing in Nashik. So in a way, that was the first introduction of TQC in India in the formal manner. At the end of this conference, which was in 86, in 1987 January, we established what was called a National Committee on Quality. And 9 members, as Dr. Krishnamurti was the chairperson. I was a member secretary. And from TVS Group, Mr. Suresh Krishna was the representative, because TVS was recognized as one of the leaders in manufacturing in terms of quality and competitiveness. So that was again a very great contribution of TVS Group in the national movement of quality.
Just wanted to say, our first exposure in this journey of quality started even before Maruti came on the scene. There was a director in Lucas by name Dr. Parnaby. He was in charge of manufacturing. He had come from Dunlop to Lucas. And he was passionate that Lucas should change and learn from the Japanese. Because he felt that the manufacturing principles on which Lucas was operating is out of date. And he felt that there's nothing great about Japanese. They have engineered a better system, just like they've learned from the West on many other things. There is no harm in us learning from them. And he spent time deciphering that and trying to tell Lucas that this can be done. But he did not have many supporters there. So in one of his visits to Lucas TVS, he looked at our plant and he told me, in a free market, you will not exist. We thought we were running a very good company because it was successful. It had customers coming to us every year. We were profitable. Our quality levels were quite contemporary at that time. So we didn't understand why you were saying that. Then he conducted a seminar, showed what a Japanese plant would look like, and compared our numbers with Japanese numbers in terms of stock and numbers which were unbelievable, right? How the concept of just in time, we only were used to just in case, right? And many of us felt it's like a dreamland, saying maybe the Japanese can do it, but he felt no, it can be done here. And he wanted desperately somebody in the Lucas group demonstrating it so that he can make the bigger companies change. And again, we took the same call, saying, why not? And that's how we started our journey on manufacturing. And in those days, manufacturing was organized according to the best practices in Europe in those days, where it was a process-oriented layout. And it's a process-oriented layout. You had all machining operations in one location called machine shop. All the press work used to be put into the press shop. Like that, according to the nature of the process, you group this. It was felt that way the technologies you can build scale in the process and skill in the process and so on and so forth. But the Japanese methodology was entirely different. It was a product flow. It was a flow manufacturing, where each product will move. So from start to finish, a product can be made in one line. So for us to move from process layout to product layout was a Herculean task. And we had literally hundreds of people on the shop floor used to a particular form of working for the last several decades. We started in 1960s. This is in 1984. So 25 years. And we had a strong union culture there. How do you change? This issue came up and many of our operators were sitting and working. Whereas this system required in many places you have to stand, not only stand but move. Many of my team members felt it can't be done here. You can start a new plant to do it. But we said, what happens to this plant then? So that was the time. That was another challenge for me. I mentioned your first challenge was at Maruti to develop a product or not. Second challenge was whether to listen to Panabi or not. We fortunately listened. And then third, when we learned about this methodology that he taught us, we had a task force to be appointed. He made one point to me. Make sure that your best people are on the task force. Usually task forces get people who people can afford to release. That would be a big mistake on your part. So, Dr. Ravichandran, whom you know, was one member of that team. It was led by somebody else. The 3-member team we formed. And they were sent to UK where Dr. Panabi took them through a training program, how to go about changing the factory. They came back with a lot of enthusiasm, how to design and so on. But the question that we faced was, well, how do you convince people to change? And if people are not willing to change, how are you going to implement it? That was the time I decided the only way is to confront the issue. So I decided to talk to the workers directly. I didn't want to go through union and all that. I'll talk to the workers directly. So I organized a series of meetings on the shop floor. Small group of workers from a particular work area. I did it twice a week, and I did this for a whole 6 months to 8 months, covering the entire factory. My message to them was, Japanese are coming to this market. We have a Japanese competitor there. And this is how they are performing in Japan. They will be doing the same here. If we don't change, we will have no business in future. So it's not a question of what is in it for me. They used to say, what is in it for me? There's no question of what is in it for you. If you don't change, business won't exist. So if you trust me, just follow what I'm saying. You're not going to be required to work more than 8 hours. Same 8 hours you'll have to work. Right? We're not asking you to work more. We want you to work differently. And your work will be more productive. You will see it yourself. I covered the whole factory. But still, somebody has to start. So we finally sought volunteers. Fortunately, by the time I was able to convert at least some people, they saw my sincerity. So I felt there must be something in it. So some people came forward, says that I will try. So we started that first cell. And everybody was watching. And once they saw that it was different, but it was easier way of working and more smoother way of working, then I think the barrier was broken. Then slowly people started coming. And at some point in time, some people said, when are you going to take me in? Kind of situation. So we were one of the, I would say, earliest in the group to change in manufacturing, thanks to Dr. Panabi.
Not only within the group, I think you're probably one of the first in India.
In India. So when the first set of cells, as we call them, started functioning and people could see in live action that they were not required to do more work, You're only to do a smarter piece of work. And with that, they were able to produce more without any extra physical effort. I think that started convincing people, and slowly it became successful. And at some point of time, people said, "When are you taking me in?" That kind of enthusiasm was there.
Wow.
So it became later on, they felt they shouldn't be left out because they feared somewhere all the recalcitrant people initially were reluctant. They started getting a bit nervous so that they became left out of the program. But eventually we brought everybody into the program. And I still remember Union used to ask me the question, what will we get for this? I said, there's nothing I can to give it to you. If at the end of it, this program leads to a better business for us, you'll automatically benefit. I can give you some recognition for your cooperation. So believe it or not, at the end of a 4-year program, all we gave was a gift. A small token gift to all the employees just to thank them for their transformational journey. Still, people enjoy that period that they went through.
What happened to the incentive scheme if you had heard this?
See, in TVS, except in one company, we never had an incentive scheme. We don't believe in incentive scheme. Because if you think about it, an operator, the only thing that he has got control on is his time, his punctuality, his discipline, following the SOP. Output is not entirely in his hands. Output is a function of the preceding process, the succeeding process, the material quality, the process quality, the technology, the equipment, and all that. What happens in the incentive schemes, from what we have seen, it sort of reduces everything to these numbers and it gets frozen in time. It doesn't get any improvement. So it doesn't allow technology to change and so on. So we never believed in incentive. In fact, I still remember in the annual wage negotiations, people used to negotiate, okay, I'll give you so much more. How much more output will you give? We never had that kind of negotiations in TVS Group. We recognize annual once in 3 or 4 year wage period as a revision that we do, not because they'll produce more. All we sought from people was flexibility. That you should be willing to do jobs in any location and any skill that you had learned. And I still remember one day when I was in the factory in the morning at 7 o'clock, I had a call from one of my industry colleagues to say, you've just concluded a wage agreement. What did you get for that? I said, what do you mean, what did you get for that? Did they agree for something? So I realized where he was getting at. So I said, it just so happened that day was a mundane city, Chennai city. That was one of the political parties called for a month. So I asked him, where are you working from? Calling from? He said, from home. Aren't you working today? So, but there's a bund, don't you know? So do you realize where you're calling? You're calling me in the factory. We are working. That's where we paid this, he said. It's a culture we're paying for. We're not paying for a culture of commitment to quality, culture for continuous improvement, culture for flexibility. That's what you pay for. Finally, that's what you can get from workers. Trying to hold a worker solely responsible for output is not a right approach. So that's what we believe.
Sorry. I think I agree with you 100%. Incentives actually work very well, starting from USA. In an economy where whatever you produce gets sold. And it's, in a way, abrogating management responsibility to manage.
That's exactly the point. Then what really happens when you put this incentive scheme, usually guys will finish that work much faster. And then there will be, what will they do the rest of the time? They'll be wasting their time in some form or another. So I don't think any sensible factory will go into incentive scheme today. Should not.
Should not is true. Many people who are in it finding it difficult to get out of it.
That's the point. It's a one-way street. Once you introduce it, you can't get out of it. So we never believed in it. None of our factories have.
Thank you very much for sharing this insight into it. It's very, very important. Okay, now you can move to...
So back to our journey, back to our manufacturing journey. I think that what started by Dr. Pandey was built on further by other Japanese experts whom we got into a picture well before even the trickier moment started. So we were focused a lot more on manufacturing revolution, as we call it. And as I mentioned to you, we were one of the earliest to do it. And then people started seeing the progress that we were making. And I still remember Mr. Pitambar was the MD of Mahindra. In one of his visits to our factory, he saw things changing in the shop floor. So he asked me, "What are you doing?" So I took him around and showed him all the changes we are bringing about. He was so excited. He wanted to know how we can help him to do it in Mahindra. So I approached Lucas, Dr. Parnaby's people, put them in touch with Mahindra people. And then Mahindra started this journey. And of course, they have progressed very well on that start that they made. So it was a very transformative journey for us. But today, it is so imbibed in us. The new factories, we start from the beginning only on this kind of flow models, not on the batch mode models. But still, you have to do batch processing in some areas like heat treatment and so on. But see, the other point I want to say, manufacturing is at the heart of a manufacturing company. You need the best people work in manufacturing. Unfortunately, there is a problem. Some of the young engineers are not attracted to shop floor. They want to sit in comfortable offices and operate through the screens, as it were. I think IT has opened up that avenue. So it's very difficult to attract talents to the shop floor. It's a pity, actually, to me. We need to do something about it to attract people into the shop floor. So what we are doing, we are taking workers who are showing that kind of skill and developing them into experts in the manufacturing domain, as it were. I don't see any other solution to this problem. But shop floor is where I think when India requires competitiveness, it is a transformation of the shop floor which is going to make it happen, not otherwise. In my opinion, even the best run factories are way behind what can be achieved, especially when I see the best in class performance in some of the fine factories in the world. We've got still quite a way to go. Until we recognize it, that is the difference. And we're going in that direction.
So the challenge often is that the leadership itself must believe that go to the shop floor.
Absolutely. I think many times people at the top don't spend time on the shop floor to understand what's going on. And I think, while I don't expect a managing director to spend 8 hours a day in the shop floor, he should be spending at least in a month, few days to see what is going on and learn, and because that is where the heart is on any manufacturing company. So it's in fact, my colleagues sometimes tell me you're unfair. You're too biased towards manufacturing. I said I'm not biased. I'm giving manufacturing its due, which it does not had. So if you think about it, shop floor environment is the most demanding environment. And that's where you have to manage, like an orchestra, integration of machine, men, materials, flow to be done at precise intervals to precise quality, and do it every hour of the day after day, year after year. Whereas other functions, right? If you don't do today, you do it tomorrow. The world is not going to stop. If you're in marketing, you're in finance, you're in HR, shop floor cannot stop even for 1 hour. Everybody will say what happened, right? A single defect at the customer end today, customer screams at you. So the guy in the shop floor, the plant head, in my opinion, is the most important man in a manufacturing company. So
Actually, the value gets added on the shop.
that's where the value is.
Right.
The purpose, I keep telling my colleagues in other companies, in our companies, all of you are there to support manufacturing. The reason is he is the person who delivers the product to the customer. And if he does well, customer is satisfied, you will get more business. If he doesn't do well and customer does not get a product on time or on quality, then you've got a battle in any case.
How did you know they made a transition, movement towards quality or TQM, etc.?
So the TQM journey started once we got into this direction. It was getting obvious that we need to do something about quality. So we were looking for some guidance in that area. That was the time I used to meet you also and exchange notes and so on. And I think simultaneously in the TVS group, quite a few companies were in the same journey. And then I think it was Sundaram Clayton who first started when getting Professor Sura and Professor Vashio. And I think I picked up very quickly on that and requested Professor Vashio to
I
help
recall one day getting a call from you and you said, look, Maruti is telling us we keep focusing on costs and you've done well in containing costs year after year after year. But we have a challenge. Maruti says you're not able to develop new products fast enough. And can you help get Professor Vashio to help us to improve the product development side? Manufacturing, we've got a good control. Now, how do we do something similar in design and development of the products?
I think Professor Vashio made a huge difference to us. And his work ethic was fantastic. Until recently, I would say until about 4 or 5 years ago, even when he had crossed 90 years of age, he had that passion to travel to India and conduct courses. And I used once asked him, what is his motivation? He told me that in the early days of his career, he studied in the ISI, Indian Statistical Institute. And he said, I learned so much at that time and I want to do something to give it back. That was his motivation.
Actually, Professor Vashio came to India. I invited him first time, and then in 1991, we did a 2-week seminar in Delhi, Train the Trainer, in the context of TQC.
He guided us in the Deming journey. And I still remember, for example, you talked about new products. We did not have a proper system, and looking in hindsight, we had a system, but that system was not adequate in hindsight. It was Professor Vashio who taught us how to approach new product. One of the principles he pointed out was the importance of standards. So we had a system where, let's say you have to design a starter motor. A will design a starter motor. B will design a starter motor. And A and B will not talk to each other. He will design it in a particular way. A will design it in a particular way. And we'll have a lot of issues on the shop floor. That's why Professor Vashio said this is not the way to do it. You have to have a company standards. What is your learning so far on starter motor design? Put it all into a standard. And anybody who wants to start a starter motor design, he has to follow the standard. If he has got a better idea, by all means, let him establish it. Then you review it. If that is a better idea, and change your standards. So that's how you can build learning into the organization. See, this is one of the important learnings that we have had in TQM journey, which is how do you institutionalize learnings? We are still not there, but this is the most important thing. Build on knowledge. Unfortunately, what really happens in our many Indian companies, including ours even today in some areas, when an experienced person leaves, knowledge leaves with him. And successes start from the beginning. We have not learned the art of capturing that knowledge, which is what Professor Vashio taught us to do QC stories and design standards and all kinds of standards. He would say, get every knowledge into black and white and institutionalize people. Absolutely. I think this is a learning that we still have to improve on, but I think things are better now compared to what it used to be. But we've got a long way to go compared to what I've seen elsewhere. So I think
I must thank you for giving us the opportunity to work along with Dr. Vashio and TVS Group, Luca's TVS, Sundaram Clayton, and subsequently the Mahindra Group because of such opportunity, we could learn and spread the message around. You rightly said it's institutionalization of knowledge through TKM, which means companies' organizational capability to be better equipped for the future.
Now, we had issues, for example, when people changed, because inevitably in an organization, somebody retires, somebody leaves, somebody new comes in. The person who comes from outside, he's come from a different experience. He doesn't understand all this. So we've seen cases where they've undone what we have done.
True.
Not because they were deliberately doing it, they thought that was their way to do it.
That's right.
So this can happen when there is no institutionalization. We still have to improve on that. And I think the Deming journey itself was interesting, where Professor Vashu used to come and visit us once in 3 months for about a week or something like that. And he will give us homework every time. And next time when he comes, we had to show him the homework. That's how we learned. And then we went through the audit process. That itself was a learning. Audit program of Deming Jose audits, both diagnostic audit as well as the final audit, was very, very interesting to me, because you have to communicate to that team in 1 hour everything that you have to do, whatever you have done at TKM. The question was, there's so much to say, how do you say it in this 1 hour? That was the time I realized one thing, the power of time. So what I did, you can do it even now. I took my stopwatch, right? I took my stopwatch and said, let's find out what is 1 minute. So I asked my people to keep quiet. I said, I'll put a stopwatch and I'll do it now for you, right? So I'll say start. Then I'll stop when it's 1 minute is over, right? Now I'm starting. This is 1 minute. As you can see, there's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, right? Not many people realize what is 1 minute.
That's true.
So I said this to my team. I said, you can say a lot in 1 minute. So 1 hour, you can say a hell of a lot if you know what to say. Often if you notice people when they communicate, they don't know what to say, so they keep on backtracking. So if you are precise in your communication, you can deliver a lot more.
That's one aspect.
That was our learning.
See, other aspect is when you start communicating through facts and data and visualize it.
Exactly.
Makes all the difference.
So we went through that Deming examination, and that was very interesting. And finally, when we won the Deming Prize, it was, of course, an exciting day for our team and Luca TVS, and we were very proud of that achievement. And we went on to win the Deming Grand Prize and so on. But I think the one thing I want to tell you what we learned was Juicy has this practice, I don't just have it, of selecting some of the companies from the Deming Award for a team of Japanese people to come and visit. It just so happened, I believe, the day we won the Deming Award that year, we scored one of the highest scores in the Deming examination. And so our company was chosen for a visit. So we received a letter from Juicy saying we want to come and visit your facility. And I saw the list of the companies. It was who is who of Japan. You know, all the big names that you see, Sumitomo, Toyota, all kinds of people. We were wondering what we are going to show to these guys. And we were very nervous, but finally, of course, we welcomed and we agreed. They came and they saw and they appreciated and they gave some suggestions. Then there was a closing session. And I still remember I asked that leader of the delegation, what did you learn from what you have seen? Then they pointed out, for example, we have a Sunday work team where volunteers used to come on Sundays to improve the company. For them, that was quite an interesting point to take home. Then in turn, I asked them the question, can you tell us, you started this journey decades ago and you're now very reputed on quality. What are you doing now for quality? So Japanese, don't talk much. So he went to the board and wrote F0QI. We were wondering, what is this F0QI? He said, failure zero is not a destination. It's a starting point. When customers buy a product from you, they don't expect a defect. So you meeting that is in line with customer expectations. What is QI? Quality innovation. What is it you have done to the customer which has delighted him because he didn't expect? Either a better functionality or some convenience or cost or whatever, right? Something which is new. When you bring out a product, of course, customers expect no defect. And I still remember that, and we are still to go on that F0QI, constant renewal of the product with better quality and so on. So I think this journey has gone on and we went on to win the Deming Grand Prize in 2012 or so. And then we have tried to spread this to other companies in our group. And in Delphi TVS also we started this journey. Professor Vashi was involved. Unfortunately, we stopped a diagnostic audit for the simple reason COVID intervened. And the few years of break took place. And we had to restart and do it, which we had to go down that path. But we are on the same journey. I want to just share also.
Let me share one or two thoughts on this. I remember Professor Kume was one of the examiners for the Deming Prize First Journey. And he often quoted this example of how people are motivated to come on Sundays without getting any additional benefit, carry out the improvement design and go back, implement what they had planned during the week. And the plant keeps running. So all the changes are made over, which he thought he has shared this with so many people around the world.
This is one idea that they picked up from us. And that habit of people coming on a Sunday to carry out some improvement action, study, etc., was something which was quite innovative that we did.
And what you mentioned, you say bringing group of people, I don't recall many other companies that did that.
I think Dr. Ravichandran was instrumental in motivating that. He tapped into the motivation of people and made that possible. So, one thing which, once people are motivated and you give recognition to them and that they're capable, they're also realizing that I can do so many things. That is the beauty of every human being has got enormous potential. Sometimes circumstances have placed a person in education or placement in society in a different way. But once the right circumstances develop, they all flower in their own ways.
Sure.
So, in many ways, TQM is about HR. It's not about technique. It's about people. It's about people understanding process.
I remember after winning the Deming Prize, one of the part of the motivation was you gave everybody a watch.
Yes.
I also got that watch. I kept it for a long, long time.
It said, quality in everything you do is what that the message was in that watch.
Right.
So, and I think what we have also realized in this quality journey, it is about people. It's not about techniques. It's not about Kanban technique, it's this technique, that technique. It's about people. People understanding. So we have articulated 5 important principles on Deming or quality journey. First and foremost is customer orientation. This is a very important consideration, which many people didn't even know who their customers were and what they were looking for. I remember in the 80s when I attended one seminar, a Japanese person conducted and on quality. Till that point in time, all of us were deeply programmed to think quality means waiting specifications, right? When he said quality is customer satisfaction, some of us were confused. He says, what does got quality to do with customers? It's about meeting the spec. That's how you are programmed, right? But now look back and say, it's obvious, but it was not so obvious then.
I think it was Professor Kurahara, one first consultant I bought from Jusos. Mr. Kurahara, I did a 3-day program twice, and then he was the first one to get involved with the Venu took him and Sundram Clayton and then TVS Motors. Unfortunately, he fell sick after 2 years. And then later on, Professor Washo and Professor Suda came in.
Yeah. And I think all of us have benefited enormously by these Japanese professors who have really transformed Indian, especially the auto industry, I would say. Of course, they're slowly studying to. So coming back to the point I was trying to make, there are 5 core principles I keep still emphasizing to in our organization. First is customer orientation, learning who your customers are, including your internal customers, right? And second is process orientation, that you are doing only a part of the work, but your work is very important. For you to understand that work, you need to understand where you fit into the whole chain. And what happens if we don't do this work properly, we're all affected, right? That recognition that I may be doing a small piece of work, but if I don't do it properly, how it affects the system. Very often people say, what can one man do? Right? That's the usual thing. What difference will I make? But that you can make a lot of difference. That's the principle behind that process orientation. Then the concept of continuous improvement, right, which is the greatest contribution Japanese have made. They constantly find ways and means of improving. But I think the other step in the process, which is standardization, institutionalization, that's where I think we still are lagging. Because what really happens in this institution, everybody has heard of PDCA cycle, but not many people have learned about SDCA. I keep pointing this out. To retain what you have also requires effort. Once you've implemented, you can't assume that it will stay as it is, right? There will be some drift that will take place because people change, equipment change. So the concept of putting effort to maintain is where I think Indian industry has to still do some work so that every effort is retained. I think that's the journey. And the other unfinished agenda, if I may say, on the quality, is non-manufacturing areas. I think Indian industry has made a lot of progress in manufacturing areas, thanks to customers and other things. But if you come to non-manufacturing areas like product design, coming to software and HR functions and finance functions, and there's so much more you can do on quality. If you take non-manufacturing areas, they also have scrap. They also have rework. They don't recognize it. When I send a bill wrongly, that is the rework. Or we have double payment you make, that is also the scrap. So, but that measurement, what is the quality measurement of this function? So we are struggling to develop that, and we are working on that. I think to me that is an unfinished agenda on the quality moment, apart from what we have to do in manufacturing. If I may move on more out of more than quality,
Right.
another interesting experience which I like to share, taking quality in a larger perspective. There was this, in diesel engine, you have this fuel injection equipment, which is highly capital intensive. And in India, there was only one company which was pioneer in this field, which is Myco, which was set up in the early 50s and dominated the industry. And for a variety of reasons, customers felt there's a need for somebody to come into this field. Because sometimes Myco used to go to have industrial relations issue, and that used to disrupt the customers. So customers were very, very keen to get somebody into it. And globally, this was such a closely held technology. Only Lucas was the only other party which had a dominant position. Bosch was, of course, bigger. So they approached us saying, why don't you come into this field? And that was a journey which is worth mentioning here. This was sometime in 80s, in the license permit Raj period. So finally, we persuaded in TVS to Luca saying, government is very keen on this, I think we should enter. So we applied for a license. But we came to the conclusion that we should not enter in the same field as it is today. We should go to the next generation technology. There was no sense in coming in the 80s to set up a business, doing something which is not contemporary in the world. So we sought license to make rotary pumps instead of inline pumps. That was the dominant technology then. Such was the times. Our application got referred to Monopolies Commission. We were asked to come and break a monopoly, but our application got referred to Monopolies Commission. And in the Monopolies Commission, people started objecting why license should not be given to us. They felt rotary pump is not suitable for India. It will not meet customer satisfaction. To cut the long story short, finally we overcame all that. We got the license, etc. But the real fillip for the project came when Mr. Ratan Tata took over Tata Motors. And they were keen to go into the smaller vehicles for which rotary pump was required. So he encouraged us, and that's how we got into that field. And we set up a plant, and they gave us the business of Indica. And many people were wondering how will Tata's choose us, because we have no track record of having established in a strong way. And interesting to us, that business on a launch of a new vehicle was quite a bold decision, which Mr. Tata did. And that was the only occasion I had the privilege of discussing the terms, commercial terms with Mr. Ratan Tata himself. He set the target for us, and we worked on it and then see how to do it. And eventually it became successful, and when we reached a point where we produced the millionth pump, I went and met him and requested him to come and visit our plant to receive it, since he was instrumental in us getting into that field. And so he made an exception. He never used to visit any supplier. So it was in 2005. He visited us and was gracious enough to attend a function and receive the millionth pump. So that was a very important milestone for us. And then we went on to promote common rail. Not many people know that we were one of the earliest to recommend to go for common rail. See, in the 90s, there were no emission standards in India. And government was contemplating emission standards. There were only basic minimal standards on smoke. There was no emission standards. That was the time when there was a survey being done and then say what technologies we should have, etc. We knew that Europe was going in a big way to common rail. And we knew that is the future. Even though we had a thriving rotary business, and that will get eliminated with common rail, we still promoted it, saying that this is the future. So we have to do this. And I don't think our competition saw it that way at that point of time. But eventually Common Rail won. And so Common Rail came into the picture and we set up a new plant in Varagadam. And today we are making very large volumes and it's doing very well. But this is a very exhilarating experience for me. It's kind of a lifetime journey to set up that plant, which is now holding a very substantial share in various segments of the market. And we are quite thrilled with the outcome of that business. So that's also, and that was the time that was promoted during the license Raj. So we had to get approvals for every import license. We had to go and justify. You can picture how difficult it was. Fortunately, when the liberalization took place, quite a lot of that controls were eased off and we could do it faster. And I think that has taught us a lot on quality because the precisions involved there, microns. So to achieve that level of quality is not only methodology and SOPs and all that, but the manufacturing technology has to come to that standard. So that forced us also to develop machine tools in India. It was a different journey and quality, a journey which we're still learning. We still have to, we have still not mastered it to achieve that kind of a zero defect that we are looking for. We still got, that's also an unfinished agenda for me in terms of how to make to the next stage of development.
In Lucas TVS, after winning the Deming prize, did you face dips and again revival and things like that?
Yeah,
how to sustain this kind of a change?
It's a very good question that you're raising, Janak. See, when the Deming journey was there were a bunch of people who were highly motivated who took it to that point. And then the Deming Award was given to us in 2004. And then you had this 2008, the global financial crisis that intervened, that created a lot of disruption in the industry. And then eventually people started retiring and new people came in. The challenge of institutionalization was the challenge for us. So we have continued to battle that. But I would say there's some part of it has been institutionalized in the sense nobody thinks about SOPs anymore. SOP is it's a must. Everybody knows, including a worker. The NPD process is very well institutionalized in terms of launching products and like a single piece flow design is very well institutionalized. But there are some pockets of lack of institutionalization that takes place. SOP violations do take place, which we need to still battle with it. What I mentioned is SDCA. Violations in the sense, what really happens, this is why I keep, there's a delta change that takes place every day in a shop floor. The person is not the same, equipment is not the same, the tooling is not the same, material is not the same. So there's a small change that takes place. So we should focus on variability management as against defect management. So the tendency on the part of people is to pay attention when there is a problem. When there's no problem, there's a tendency not to pay attention, which is a human failing, you may say. There's a breakdown in the machine, everybody goes and says why and all that. But the machine has given out enough signals before it broke down. But nobody takes notice of it then. So the real challenge for us to institutionalize is institutionalizing the variability management. So when there are no issues, that is the time that you have to battle to reduce variability. It is a variability which eventually leads to quality issues. So the more and more you make variability less and less, the robustness of your system improves. That is where the challenge really we have, whether it is connected with technology and methods and process or with people. Because there's a constant change that takes place in the people. Of course, new people come in, old people go. The new person does not have the same understanding the old person has. So that that challenge continues to remain. But hopefully that over a period of time, things are getting better. So hopefully we will not lose the learnings that we have had.
Great. I recall Professor Washo in one of his visits, he was mentioning about this. Now, since Lucas TVS had already taken a lot of help from Indian statistical institutes, built their processes, improved it. So one day during his visit, he was shown a particular process with a process capability of 2.5, 2.6. So after a while he smiled. If the process capability is 2.5, then why your rejection rate is 1%?
Exactly.
And then there was a lot of defensive mechanism. No, we did. So he says, no. What he showed was that if you change the sampling plan or what it should be, you suddenly find it is not 2.6, it is probably less than 1. So then somebody asked him, but we are following the books where it is. What you're telling us, where is it stated? Got a little angry. He didn't speak English. My books, yeah. It's my experience.
One thing you must learn from Japanese professors. I remember the experience the Yamaguchi. I don't know if you heard of Yamaguchi-san. He was the practitioner of TPM.
Yeah.
So we engaged him in Delphi TVS. And when Yamaguchi came to our plant to explain about the TPM methodology, which is somewhat different to TQ methodology. And people started asking questions. We have this tendency to ask questions. I think we have got, Indians have capability to ask too many questions sometimes. After some time, he just packed his bags and started leaving. So I was wondering, so I went after him and said, why are you leaving? He says, I cannot teach these people. It's a waste of time. Then I somehow persuaded him to bring him back. Then he had told people, I will never forget that. He says, you called me because you think I know and you don't know. If you don't know, then listen. If you know, then there's no need for me.
That's true.
So he said, first do what I tell you. Implement it. Then ask me questions. Don't ask me questions before you even try. So that was an important lesson for us in learning. When you get an experienced person to come, don't ask him too many questions. Just simply follow what he's saying. See your experience. If your experience conforms to that, will explain it. If you still have some issues, you can ask it. So that was an important journey.
Balaji, having experienced so much and you have shared, now how do you build on this success you've achieved so far for the future, which has seen so much technological changing, electric vehicles, Industry 4.0, AI, whole host of new things. How do you plan to, prepare Lucas TVS for the future?
It's an excellent question. If you take the Lucas TVS group of companies, it basically consists of Lucas TVS, Delphi TVS, it's a listed company called India Nippon Electricals, and Lucas Senior Service, which is an all India service organization. We have a combined turnover of about 8,000 crores or so. But precisely this question has been bothering us for the future. So we've taken two initiatives. One is an initiative to get into battery manufacturing. So we have set up a battery plant called TVS Indion, which is the name of the company, which is a subsidiary of Lucas TVS. And it is now supplying batteries to TVS Motor for the two-wheelers. But we are working on a new approach to technology here. As is well known, the lithium-ion technology is dominated by the Chinese. And Chinese control all the supply chain elements of this technology. So we are working with a leading R&D company in the US to come up with a very different approach on this. One of the approaches we're trying to do is how to improve the safety of the product. because thermal event is still a point of consideration, and people are concerned because once in a while you keep hearing about the battery catching fire and the vehicles catching fire. There have been a case of an aeroplane being completely dismantled or gutted because of a battery bank catching fire. So thermal event is an important consideration. Second, the supply chain in terms of developing those materials. So we are working on some technologies where we can have a battery pack. See, today, if you look at the battery pack, it's a cell which gets packed into a pack. So at the level of a cell, if the efficiency is 100, when it comes to the pack, it gets reduced to 50. Because to put the cell into the pack and put all the other things together, you lose a lot of space. So we are now working on a new technology approach called electrode to pack. So instead of the energy dropping by 50% at a full finished product, we want to raise it by another 50% to go to 70%. And as we speak, a prototype is being built for supply to one of the customers to see how it works. That's one area we're working. Second area we're working is on practically eliminating the safety risk. So there's a concept we're working with our partners where the cell can sense situations when things are about to go wrong and completely cut off so that the event never happens. It'll dismember itself kind of approach. The other technology we're working on is on fast charging. So today fast charging is possible, what people claim as fast charging, but you do it at the cost of the life of the battery. But we're trying to work on a technology where fast charging can happen without affecting the life. So eventually, the technology we want to bring out is something which is safer, more efficient, and supply chain independent. But this is a very ambitious goal, I must say. And this to do it by ourselves is going to be a challenge. So we're working with some partners to create an ecosystem because you need to build equipment. One of the biggest challenges in this business is R&D, you can prove anything in the lab. To productionize it in mass scale and make it viable is a real challenge. So I've taken on that task, but I don't know that I'm going to succeed in my journey, but I'm determined to work on that. That's my
great, because
directions.
you have taken challenges in the past and succeeded. Of course, there are always obstacles on the way. I'm sure you'll succeed in this as well.
See, one thing I've always believed is when you get into a field, you must do something different to what is being done today. You have to bring in the next generation technology. That's how we did in fuel injection. We went into the next generation all the time. So the world is moving faster. So India should leapfrog. That's my view. And that's why I welcomed also the emission standards when government forced BS6 skipping BS5. I think that was the right call. So what is the point? The world is somewhere there, and the world has taken several steps to go there. You don't need to take the same number of steps to go there. A good example is telecommunication. Look at the cell. Today, India's telecom system is probably more advanced than many parts of the world because we have leapfrogged.
Right.
And that's what we should do. So leapfrogging is a key to our future. This is what I strongly feel. And hopefully Lucas TVS will make a small contribution in that area. Hopefully we'll succeed with us. The second point I'm going to do, we have set up a Lucas TVS Management Institute, Leadership Institute. I think that's the right word, Leadership Institute. We want to institutionalize leadership development. We want to prepare our own internal case studies. And then so that for posterity we continue the learning process for people. And also we should also encourage R&D work, not only in product but also in process. I think one of the areas which is not much focused on is process development. See, product and process are two sides of the same coin. If you have a good process, then a good product will follow. You want to get a good product, you need a good process. But process development, we can't be dependent on importing from all parts of the world. So we need to make a beginning there. So these are some of the areas that we are focusing on. Hopefully the next generation will take it forward and run with it.
Great. What would be your advice? Last question, really, to a young entrepreneur setting up a medium-sized organization and the kind of impatience they have. What would be your advice to this young generations that, learning from your experience, you could tell them?
First of all, I would tell the young generation that India in 2025 is a very different place to India of 1970s and 80s where I came from. If I was a youngster today, with this experience I have, I can do a lot more. So I want to say something about risk-taking. What I realized about risk-taking is a statement, is a perception issue. What you think as the risk. For example, when our late chairman wanted me to set up a 200,000 plant, I saw a risk, but he didn't see a risk because he knew the future. He knew the demand. He believed in that. So the point I'm trying to make is that we need to have a global view. I will tell the young people to travel. Go to China. I would strongly recommend them to go to China. The way that country has progressed, the speed at which they are progressing, the leapfrogging they're doing will motivate you. It will push you that we can also do it. I think India has all the credentials to leapfrog and go forward. So I would say young people have to be bold, take bigger bets, but you have to work hard. And there are no free lunches. You need to be, there are no guaranteed outcomes, but if you put the right effort in the right steps, you will get there. I have no doubts on that. So that's what my advice to them will be.
Thank you very much, Balaji, for sparing your time and sharing. I'm sure it'll be very valuable, Nandri.
Thank you, Janak. Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure as much for me to share these experiences. I hope the podcast is of value to people, and I'll be very delighted to work with you to develop this institutionalization concept that you're working so that future generations can learn from our experiences. Thank you.